Um, Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Katz.
Sorry
I'm
about that interruption.
No, that's fine. All of a sudden I saw we're recording. I'm Barbara Katz. I'm co-director of Family Voices of Wisconsin. And if you don't know Family Voices, we are a parent-run organization that supports families throughout the state in connecting to and advocating for healthcare and long-term supports for their children. We work with families and we work with professionals. We have newsletters and let's see, we have newsletters and fact sheets and on video trainings and trainings such as this. We have an annual advocacy day called Advocacy for Change. We do a lot of partnering with Tim and his team at the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs, as well as the other regional centers around the state. And we do work around family leadership. If you'd like to be connected to our work through our listserv, the Family Action Network, please feel free to put your email in the chat box, and we'll be sure to add you to our listserv. Glad to see everybody. I myself am the parent of a soon to be next week, actually Monday, son who has developmental and intellectual disabilities. He was born with a benign brain tumor, and that led to his disabilities. All of our staff are family members, and our trainings come from questions that over the years families have shared with us and have asked of us. And so I'm going under the assumption that you all have watched the video that Tim invited you to watch on the email that was sent out. And if you haven't, no problem. Just know if you want the full training to go back to our website. Tim put it in the chat box. Thank you, Tim. And there's also, so you can download the slides if you'd like. You can watch the online version of this training, which is a little bit fuller than what I'll be talking about today. And importantly, we have a PDF of web-based resources that will help support the information of what we're talking about today, and will give you places to go deeper into particular topics that you're interested in. So without further ado, let us start. I told you about Family Voices. Tim told you about the regional center. So his regional center and his team work in the orange counties down here. And if you download this, you can get all of the information off of the PowerPoint. But, you know, a lot of times when people start with thinking about transition, it can be really daunting and really, in some ways, overwhelming. And part of that is because there are certain ages where things happen. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those ages that you need to be aware of when things happen. And then I think it's helpful if you think about transition almost being a lifelong activity. So while there are certain things that happen at certain ages, the whole process of thinking about where your loved one is going to do with their day, if they're going to work, if they're going to go to college or tech school, where they're going to live, what they're going to do for fun, who they're going to hang out with, all of those are moving targets. And certainly, as we found out during this last year with COVID, that was a huge moving target, right? And disrupted a lot of lives, including our kids with disabilities and adults with disabilities. So, so the takeaway from all of that is to know that there are certain ages that trigger certain activities. But when you sort of think about that whole scope of transition and moving into life as an adult, take a deep breath and know that you really have a lifetime to deal with that. Because truly, if we think about our own lives and how we have evolved since we were 18, it can be quite substantial for a lot of people, right? Some people have been just sort of kept their lives pretty much the same, and some people have had major changes and major decisions where they've changed the direction of their life. And so with our kids with disabilities, it's totally variable and totally individualized. But when people turn 18, there are some legal changes in our country. People become legally emancipated adults. So what that means is that at 17 and 364 days, a parent has full parental rights over a child, including making decisions on their behalf. When they're 18, that changes. The individual, regardless of ability or disability, then has the legal right to make their own choices and their own decisions. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more when we get to supported decision making. For our kids who are in special education, we know that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, is a special education law that has requirements for transition in Wisconsin to start at the age of 14. It also has a rule that says services end the year a person turns 21. So if somebody turns 21 in February, they can continue to receive special education services till the end of that semester. If someone turns 21 in October, also they can receive services actually till the end of that school year. So it's a school year in which somebody turns 21 that services end. And that's important, especially for kids who want to stay in school past their senior year. There is an entity in our state, there's one in every county, called Aging and Disability Resource Centers, or ADRCs. The Aging and Disability Resource Center is the place where people go when they want to connect as an adult with public benefits and long-term supports. So if you have a child who's in the Children's Long-Term Support Program, likely or the CLTS waiver program, likely their service coordinator will help with that transition and with connecting with the ADRC. If your person is not enrolled in the Children's Long-Term Support waiver program, then they can connect on their own with the ADRC. You just call and say, I have a child who is transitioning within the next several months, and I'd like to see what benefits they might be eligible for. And so you would set up an appointment. You would meet with an intake a specialist. They will do have a conversation. If you or they, if they suggest or you want to have your child screened for long-term support services at the adult level, those programs are called Family Care and IRIS. You can ask for an evaluation, which is free and called the functional screen. And this will determine whether or not somebody is eligible for adult long-term support services. They will, if someone is not on Medicaid, they will talk about getting connected, how you would get connected to Medicaid. If someone is on Medicaid, they'll talk about the reevaluation process, because at 18, the criteria for Medicaid changes from child criteria to adult criteria. They'll see if you have an interest in, or if your person has an interest in applying for Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, SSI. They'll help you with that process and tell you how to go through that. They also have people called disability benefits specialists at the ADRC. And these disability benefits specialists can help you connect with, or can help your person connect with any public benefit that they might have some interest in receiving. So ADRCs are a great place. And they ask that people not come before they're 17 and a half, basically because that's the time in somebody's life that you would start applying for a variety of these programs. Any questions about what the ages trigger or anything like that? So Joseph, you had a question of what number do you call to transfer from community care to IRIS? Okay, so you are with family care, and community care is your managed care organization. You would call the ADRC. Do you live in Dane County? I'm making the assumption that you might.
Yes.
Joseph, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, unmute. Yes. Hello. No, we live in Milwaukee County.
In Milwaukee County. Okay. Yeah. Then you would call, so Milwaukee County, of course, is a little bit different than the other counties. And Milwaukee County has an aging resource center and a separate disability resource center. They are in the latter stages of combining the two. So you would just Google Disability Resource Center in Milwaukee County, and that will get you the phone number. And Tim just put it in the chat box. So thank you very much. Tim, can you tell if they have combined yet to an aging and disability resource center? Or does it still look like there's still a disability resource center?
So it's still, well, they now look like they may be branded as Aging Disability Resource Center.
Okay, so then they did that. So yes, so I mean, it's as we speak, yes, this merger is going on.
Yep. There is what is on their website for everybody to see.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep, thanks. So there's the phone number and there's the email. And you would just ask for an intake appointment and say you want to switch from family care to IRIS, and they will take it from there. So let's talk a little bit about this notion of supported decision-making. So a few minutes ago, we talked about how when young people are 18, they make their own decisions, right? It's a fundamental principle in our country that adults are free to make their own choices and their own decisions. It gets a little complicated when people need assistance. And the reason why it gets complicated is because there's a number of choices that people can make in which to get that assistance. So we through the Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs Network and through a lot of disability programs in Wisconsin, talk about supported decision-making. One of the more common tools of supported decision-making is guardianship. But it's really important to know that there's a spectrum of tools that can be used. Those that retain the individual's right and ability to make decisions. And then we're going to talk about a couple of those tools that exist. And then there's guardianship, where essentially that right to make decisions is given away to somebody else. So let's talk about this spectrum of supported decision-making. At the very sort of least involved end, where people continue to keep their rights, is a release of information or consent. So for the parents out there, this is very similar to the release of information that you sign annually at the IEP meeting. And it can be used with a bank for financial information. It can be with a health system for health information. It can be a school for school information. And there is So it's very similar, but every institution has their own release of information. And by signing it, the individual, the young adult with a disability who's over the age of 18 signs this to give somebody who they name the ability to have information from a particular institution shared with them. And Tim is putting a great link that I encourage everybody to watch about supported decision making. Tim, who did that?
So I put 2 links in. We had someone come in and talk about, so we had, who do we have? I think we had George Zasky come in
Okay,
and talk about supported decision making. So we were able to record that, and that's on our, besides the actual video link, which I sent there, it's on the Transition Talks Tuesday website. And then just last night, we had Tammy Jackson from Board of People with Developmental Disabilities
great.
was talking about supported decision making for the 5-county Transition Talks series. So you have 2 different
Excellent.
people that both are together. I think it's some of the best stuff that I've heard on supported decision making. They are both fantastic.
Then I would encourage you to watch those videos. No doubt, Tammy was talking about supported decision-making, this supported decision-making agreement, which is a tool that's fairly new to Wisconsin, maybe 4 or 5 years. And I'd say 3 to 5 years. My sense of time is so off, I don't even know, but it's in the past several years. Anyway, Tammy Jackson works for the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, and the board is championing these supported decision-making agreements. They are a tool in Wisconsin that allows the person with the disability to appoint or assign someone to, or some people to help them make decisions. These are new legal tools in Wisconsin. And George Zasky is a board member for the Board with People with Developmental Disabilities. He's a dad and he's also an attorney. And so no doubt that on his video, he was talking about some of the other options as well as the supported decision-making tool. So some of the other options include powers of attorney, and you can have a power of attorney for healthcare. You can have a power of attorney for finances. Those are only active when they're activated. And those forms can be found, the powers of attorney can be found on the Department of Health Services website. On our resource sheet, we have direct links to those 2 powers of attorney forms, and there are also instructions for how to use them and how to complete them. The Board for People with Developmental Disabilities has a toolkit that Tim put that link to the toolkit in the chat box. Man, thanks, Tim. You can read my mind about resources there. And so that is where I would go if that is something that you would like to be interested, that you would like to check out. Now, some of these tools can be, well, majority of the tools can actually be used in conjunction with one another. And so that is helpful too. But this is where it gets into there being a lot of choices and decisions. Tim Markle is a great resource for people to talk through options at the regional center, and his team are very knowledgeable people, and they can help. They won't tell you what to do, but they can help ask you questions that will help you weigh options about what is most important. And then there's guardianship. So all of these first 4 bullets are tools that allow the person with the disability to, as I said earlier, retain their right, their civil right to make their own choices and decisions. It's again part of the benefits of being an adult in America. In guardianship, that is the one tool where that the decision making and the choice making is given over. It's essentially relinquished from the person with the disability to somebody else who the court appoints to be a guardian for a person. It's a court process. It's something that can be temporary or permanent. And it's important to know that even within the role, the sort of the spectrum of guardianship, there are options. Wisconsin is one of the states that offers people choices and options about exactly what guardianship would be sought for and rights that people would retain. So for example, my husband and I have guardianship for our son, Ben. But Ben retains the right to vote, retains the right to marry, retains the right to get some licenses without our permission. So those are, when we sought guardianship for him, those were things that we said, we still want him to retain some of those rights to make his own choices and decisions. And those were some that that we decided were right for him. And the court agreed with us, as did someone who the court appointed to essentially be an advocate for Ben. And that person is called a guardian ad litem. They're basically looking out for the individual's rights while guardianship is being sought, to make sure that guardianship is an appropriate decision-making solution for each particular individual. So I will pause here and see what questions people might have around guardianship or other tools for supported decision-making.
I do. I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so I did have the papers drawn up for his guardianship already, but the problem is that I have not done what I'm supposed to do after, like, like get it notarized and sent to the courts and things like that. So is there a time limit on those papers, or am I going to have to redo them?
So that's a great question. And that question I would check with your county circuit court, because I don't know the way in which different counties might have different timelines. And so I would check with Milwaukee County Circuit Court in their probate division.
Probate division. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Tim, is there anything that you want to add about what you've learned or observed about guardianship and supported decision-making?
To summarize the last two, they do it much better than me. So watch the recordings. But the summary is there's no reason to jump to there may not be a reason to jump to full guardianship. Try supported decision-making, try release of informations, try power of attorneys, the least restrictive spectrum. And then if none of those are working and are keeping the person safe, you can still apply for guardianship. But once you apply for guardianship and receive guardianship, it's very hard to go backwards. But you can always get more restrictive. It's very hard to get less restrictive. So really look at what the needs are of that individual and the family.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And, it's the reason why it's so hard to sort of, not impossible, but so hard to undo guardianship is because there is a judge that essentially said this individual is incompetent to take care of their own affairs. Therefore, they need somebody else to do it on their behalf. What that means is, unless someone all of a sudden becomes competent, and that can be proven, it's almost impossible to undo guardianship. Again, not impossible, but difficult. People often ask about if somebody has a guardian, what happens, like say a guardian's a person, a parent, I would hope the guardian would be a person, but if the guardian is a parent, what happens when they are no longer able to serve as guardian? Either at the time of guardianship or any time after, a standby guardian or a successor guardian could be named. You would have to go back to the court and reopen that guardianship case. So again, tons of information, links on our resource sheet, and those two great videos that Tim shared. Tim, will you be able to send out these links in an email afterwards? Is that possible?
That is just such a very interesting question. And the answer is yes. We will compile everything that's in the chat into a resource sheet specific for what we talked about on this video. And we'll send it to the people that have registered and attended tonight, as well as linking to the video.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Along with, of course, well, no, we don't need to copy the video. We just send them to the Family Voices website. I love that.
Correct. Correct. Good. So let's talk a little bit more about SSI and SSDI. So as we said earlier, SSI, Supplemental Security Income, is a government benefit program that is available to people who are low income and also have a disability determination. Joseph, yep, we'll send that information to your mom. I see that in the chat box. When somebody's eligible for SSI, they also get Medicaid with them as a benefit. So why is Medicaid important? Well, Medicaid serves as a health insurance. It can either be primary or secondary if you have private health insurance. But importantly, if you're eligible for the long-term support program, Medicaid is the, you need to be eligible and enrolled in Medicaid to access the long-term support programs because they're actually a benefit of the Medicaid program. SSDI is Social Security Disability Income. That is when somebody, people with disabilities can get that when either they have worked enough to pay into the Social Security system and they have a documented disability. They have, they're found to be disabled by an organization called the Disability Determination Bureau. So they have either worked enough hours to be able to pay in to then get money back, or they are an adult child with a disability and their parent has either retired or died, and the parent through their work has paid into the Social Security system. Somebody can have SSI and SSDI. Depending on earnings, work earnings, wages, the amount of your Social Security and the amount of your Social Security disability, Supplemental Security Disability Income might vary. Social Security Disability Income might vary and might fluctuate. So that's where the benefits specialists at the Aging and Disability Resource Center can be really handy. So you can connect with the Aging and Disability Resource Center benefits specialists really at any time past 17 and a half, and to talk about this. So say, at 25, you're someone with a disability and you had been receiving SSI, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, or a parent retires, or you've worked enough to get to pay into the Social Security program, you also start getting SSDI. You'll get a letter, but if it's all super confusing, you can call the ADRC and say, and make an appointment to talk with the benefits specialist, and they can help you with that information. The health insurance that goes along with SSDI is Medicare. And Medicaid and Medicare can also work together. And people who have both Medicaid and Medicare, one of the phrases that's used is called dual eligible. So you might hear somebody talking and using that term called dual eligible. That means that you're eligible for both Medicaid and Medicare. And it's possible for someone to have private health insurance, Medicaid, and Medicare. So again, benefit specialists can help you make sense of all of this, and as can, if you have private health insurance, your health insurance provider. So let's talk a little bit about these long-term support programs. So for those of you who have kids in the Children's Long-Term Support Program, you know that they provide a variety of supports and services to your children and family that support your child to participate in the community. For adults, for people over the age of 18, those long-term support programs are different. They're called Family Care and Iris. They also have different eligibility criteria and functional eligibility criteria. So you will need to get what's called reevaluated using the same tool, the functional screen, right around the time of being 18 or a little bit before, to see what your eligibility is for Family Care and Iris. There are some times, particularly for people with behavioral health issues without a physical disability or a developmental disability, who might qualify for the Children's Long-Term Support Program, but might not qualify for Family Care and Iris. So that's something to keep in mind. You can always ask for a copy of your functional screen to make sure that questions were asked appropriately, answered appropriately. And you can always ask to be rescreened, and you can always appeal a decision. So there's, again, lots of options and opportunities within that decision-making process.
So Barbara, we do have a question on
Yes.
SSI and SSDI, which you
Yes.
maybe you'll answer. But in the chat, when my son's biological dad retired, my son was on SSI and son has a disability. We were told by the Social Security people that my son had to switch from SSI to SSDI benefit. He could not receive both.
So what happens sometimes is if the SSDI benefit is high enough, it will essentially erase any benefit that you would get from SSI, but you would still get Medicaid. So again, there's a very complicated relationship. So for example, when my son Ben started receiving SSDI, he received it when he was maybe 22 or no, probably about 25 or 26, based on his work record, right? So he was getting SSI, and then all of a sudden he started getting another deposit, and we got a letter saying he is now eligible for SSDI because he's paid enough into the Social Security system. And that went along for a couple of years. His SSI went down a little bit, but he still got SSI and SSDI. When my husband retired, Ben then started drawing SSDI on my husband's work record, which was much more significant than Ben's work record. At that point, his SSI zeroed out. So he now gets SSDI based on both his work record and my husband's work record. So, but again, it is super complicated, right? So that's why when you have questions, yes, the Social Security folks can often answer the questions, but if you're in doubt, I would get a second opinion through the disability benefit specialists at the ADRC. So the things that Family Care and Iris can pay for are supports for people, again, to be connected to the community. So they could be work supports, or they can be supports to live independently or with roommates in a house. They can be supports to do recreation and leisure activities. The long-term support waivers will not pay for rent or a mortgage, but they will pay for people to help people live independently in their homes through a benefit called, for example, supportive home care. For our kids with disabilities who move out into their places, there are also sort of generic economic supports that are available for people who are of low income. So people who are eligible for SSI and Medicaid through SSI typically are of low income and can benefit from the economic support. So you think about affordable housing. There's different kinds of affordable housing programs. The ADRC can give you information about those. There's energy assistance. There's food share. All of these are programs that have to be applied for, but can be quite beneficial. So for example, Ben, my son Ben, lives in an apartment in Madison. He has a roommate. They're in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's in an affordable housing building because their income together was less than the ceiling for people that were able to be eligible to live in that building. So any questions before we leave this section? Are there any questions about these public benefits or other things that we've spoken about so far?
So far, there is nothing in the chat, but people are very free to.
I have a
Unmute.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nan.
My son has, and I had asked the question before about the SSI and SSDI difference. We also have had a situation where my son just had a benefits analysis done.
Mhm.
That benefits analysis, the analyst discovered that Social Security had made a mistake and was paying my son too much money because they were paying him from the result of my retirement and from my ex-husband's retirement. And we had no clue that this was wrong. We did not know what was going on, but they've said that that my son needs to pay this excess money back. We are appealing this because it was not our mistake. We didn't know what was going on, but this is actually the second time that Social Security has made this mistake in my son's account. Is there anything that we can do to try to keep this kind of stuff from happening, or it's been kind of a nightmare?
Well, it's great you had the benefits checkup. Now, it's important to know that there's 2 different kinds of benefits specialists. There's a work incentives benefits specialist and a disability benefits specialist. So
I believe this was a disability benefit specialist.
Through the ADRC or through DVR?
Not through DVR.
Okay, then yeah, okay, good. So, Social Security would say it's everybody's option to, not everyone's option, everybody's responsibility to monitor their benefits. Now, oftentimes, if there is a payback situation, you can work out a payback plan with Social Security. And so it wouldn't be necessarily a situation of having to pay thousands of dollars back all at once. You can often come up with a payment plan to do that. So that is something to investigate. But, I think it's a really good idea, like when you see amounts changing, SSI amounts, SSDI amounts, if you have any questions, to promptly call the Social Security Administration or to have a benefits analysis. And you can have them, I believe, annually at no cost.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. The first time this happened, was before Dane County converted, and the broker recognized that it had happened and tried to inform Social Security that they were paying him too much, and they would not believe her. And it was like they just couldn't conceive that they were making a mistake. And so we saved all the money that he was getting that was extra and then paid it back because we knew it was wrong, but they wouldn't acknowledge it. And then now it's happened now a second time, but he's older now, has more responsibility. He was monitoring his own checking account, but didn't recognize the amounts that came in were wrong. And so, it's just one of those things that was very, very frustrating.
Right. And, it is extremely frustrating, right? When people have to bear the consequences of something that wasn't their error. And yes, so that is super frustrating. But again, I think as much as possible so in a situation like that, Nancy, maybe just checking in with Matt on an annual basis and say, let's look at your Social Security, or maybe think about every year or 18 months having another disability benefits checkup just to make sure that things are okay.
Thanks,
so
Barb.
that's something to think about. Yeah.
And we have
I
another.
really second your advice on that. It's very important to have a disability benefits analysis more than once and every few years, because there's all kinds of weird things that change. And this is one of them that happened to us.
And what's really nice about the disability benefits analysis is that they are, there's no cost. So they're free of charge. So Joseph, I see you have a question in the chat box. I'm wondering if you and your mom can unmute yourself. So let's see. So to help Joseph, can the ADRC help with the purchase of a home? Yes, sometimes it can be cheaper to have a mortgage than pay rent. So let's see. ADRCs can refer you to community-based organizations that might be able to help. So for example, in Madison, there's an organization called Moving Out. And I believe that Moving Out does do some work statewide. But you might want to contact them and see what kind of assistance they might be able to provide for folks living outside of Dane County in finding housing. And they might, similarly, the ADRC in Milwaukee County might also have, sometimes the ADRCs have lists of different of affordable housing buildings. Oh, but that would be for rent. But Moving Out would give information about different kinds of loans for purchases for people of low income and how you might go about looking for a home that would be appropriate. So they might, while they might not provide direct services outside of Dane County, they will have resources that will be helpful. And Tim just put that website link in the chat box.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So we have about, let's see, we have about 12 minutes left together. I want to just pause and see if anyone came tonight with any burning questions that we might want to think about with regard to health, community living, or education that we've not mentioned yet.
I have a question since nobody else has one.
Sure.
Okay, so the reason why I asked about transferring from community care to Iris is because
Mm-hmm.
community care, um, they we were asking for services, and every single service we asked for, they did not give us. And they said that Joseph needed to be evaluated. Um, and so they did evaluate Joseph, but he's not going to answer the questions correctly. Okay, he has autism. He's going to answer what he thinks is going on, and um, and that's the problem with me not having guardianship anymore right now. So I mean, Joseph is we have a doctor's note from the doctor that he's not able to live by himself and things like that, that he needs all these services. And we didn't get it through community care. So I mean, is that going to be a problem with Iris too? Does everyone have a problem like that?
So let's talk a little bit about, let's go into this community living section and let's talk a little bit about this. Let's see. Whoops. So just a little bit of a primer on family care and Iris and the functional screen. It's really hard for either an individual with a disability or one of their supporters to be as realistic as possible about somebody's needs. And so I like to sort of talk about it as rosy versus realistic, right? We are, as humans, we are, and as individuals and as parents, we want to talk about what's going well. We want to boast, we want to brag about how people are successful, right? The problem is when you do a functional screen to see if you're eligible for community long-term support programs like Family Care or Iris, you need to be as realistic as possible. So instead of talking about, how well you might, and independent you are in a house and how you can, cook for yourself and do your laundry, to be realistic and say, well, when you do cook, what kinds of supports do you need? Do you have to have everything cut up by somebody? Can you only use the microwave and not the stove? Can you not use any electrical appliances? In doing laundry, can you, do you need assistance in sorting or in folding or in, so what you need to do with the functional screen is really think about all of the aspects of daily living that is asked of you and what is most realistic in the way, even if you occasionally need assistance, to mention that, because, and that is the realistic way to look at what kinds of support someone needs. The other thing I want to say is when somebody is going through the functional screen, they can have anyone with them to help them answer that they want. So they don't need to just do this on their own. And so if a functional screener says, no, Joseph, you need to answer without your mom or without your dad or without your brother or sister, you need to do this on your own. You'll need to say, but they need to help me in answering these questions realistically. And that's everybody's right who has a disability to have whomever they want to support them, regardless of guardianship. So that's a really important thing for everyone to remember.
Well, that's exactly what happened, okay? But what happened was while they were doing the functional screening with him, so I was also on the disability. So the nurse, so the guy is asking him questions. Then the nurse went to me and she says, well, I might as well do your blood pressure and do this and do this. So she took my attention away from the question.
Yeah.
Okay. And that wasn't fair. That wasn't fair at all. So then I asked
Yep.
them, well, then I want another functional screening for Joseph.
Right.
Because I wasn't
Right.
enough. And they never did set that up, okay? And then during COVID, you know, we all the money we only had was food stamps, which is what $200 a month we had, you know, besides of the extra that we got. But the thing was, I know that we were able to get some benefits that they were consent food, the frozen food, because I even called them. And they denied us of that. And I told them, I says, I can't cook. Joseph can't cook. We can't go to the store or nothing. And they even denied us the food. I says, that's crazy.
Right. And so sometimes you have to be as assertive an advocate as you can. And really, if somebody is not responsive at the ADRC, you can always ask for the supervisor. You can always ask to speak with another intake counselor. So know that when you call and somebody either says it can't happen and you know it can,
Yes.
or they don't follow through, you need, it's hard, super hard, particularly when you're supporting someone with a disability and have a disability yourself, but you need to just continue to go back and really be persistent in getting that.
So that's why I'm canceling community care and I'm going to try with Iris. So, but I go to ADRC and tell them that I want to transfer to Iris, right?
Correct. And so when you do that, Joseph will get a budget, and that budget will help. He will then identify what outcomes or goals that he wants to achieve, and then start building a plan. So he would make the decisions and the choices about how about how to use his budget. And so the difference with family care and Iris is that Iris is a much more self-directed program. So there's a lot more opportunity within that program to really direct how you want to spend the funds that are available. I noticed that Tim put in the chat box the link for the Independent Living Center in Milwaukee, and they can help with assisting with some advocacy. He also put in the contact information for the Southeast Regional Center, which is his counterpart in Milwaukee, and they can help with Joseph up until he's 21.
Okay.
And then, you know, if all else fails and you're not really, and this is true for anybody who's listening now, if you're not feeling like you're getting treated correctly or that laws are not being followed, Disability Rights Wisconsin, which also has the link in the chat box, Disability Rights Wisconsin is the protection and advocacy organization for people with disabilities within the state of Wisconsin. And so they can either help directly or refer you again to other resources in the community that might be able to help.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. So I see we're almost out of time. Are there other questions from others that are on the call? Tim popped into the chat box a short evaluation. So if you would be so kind as to complete that and fill that out, that would be awesome. And Tim, do you have any closing comments? I'm going to stop sharing. I know that there was a lot that we, oh, sorry, but I know that there was a lot that we didn't talk about. And so I would encourage you to go to the video and watch that.
And all of the regional centers throughout Wisconsin are familiar with the What's After High School curriculum. And so if you do have questions, Family Voices is obviously there. They have a wealth of resources on their website, but you can, yes, including the resource sheet that just is the presentation on steroids. They just have so many great links. And so you could contact them, or you can also contact the regional center. And as Barbara said, they love to have questions like, I'm not sure what I should be doing, or I feel like I'm stuck. Is they're there to help you get unstuck, to help you figure out that system that's out there. So please feel free to reach out to them as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the Southern Regional Center, the Autism Society, and DeForest High School. And thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing all of your information with us today. And it's definitely sounds like a great resource that I might have to look in at some point here. So thank you so much. All right.
You're welcome. And I will stay on as people are popping off in case anyone has any individual questions.